Courtney Cronin covers the Bears for ESPN Chicago. She joins us on the Kap J Hood morning show here on ESPN 1000 as Kevin Warren officially had his press conference as the president of the Chicago Bears. Good morning, Courtney.
Hey, guys. How are you?
What's up, Double C?
Courtney,
not too much. Busy day yesterday.
Yeah, no question. We just want to get your thoughts on what you heard. What was the most impressive thing that stood out to you about Kevin Warren yesterday?
And there was a lot. I think the reason he chose this job and embracing the challenge, saying that he wouldn't have wanted to come to a place where everything was already in place. And of course, that kind of makes sense. If you want to leave your legacy somewhere, you don't want to come where everything's already perfect. And if things were perfect, the team wouldn't have been looking for a president anyways. But just knowing that he's somebody who makes moves, like he has big, grandiose ideas, and he's able to follow through on those. I mean, that's something you don't often see, and the stuff that he brings to the table. And he talked for an hour up at the podium, which was the press conference that people saw live stream. And then he had one-on-ones with every television station, did small groups with beat writers, did radio interviews across Chicago. I mean, the guy talked for 4 hours. And he didn't miss a beat. I think just how impressive he is and how he can captivate an audience, no matter what the topic is, just everything from talking about no other options than the Arlington Heights site right now, that they're, fully committed to that and trying to build a stadium there, to what he talked about with football operations and his background with Dick Vermeil and the St. Louis Rams. I think there's a lot here to be excited about if you're a Bears fan, because the team president is not normally a role that fans care about. The avid fan cares about what the general manager can do to build a roster and what the head coach can do to coach a team. But Kevin Warren's a different kind of executive. I mean, the Bears knocked this one out of the park after interviewing reportedly from George McCaskey over 20 candidates that had an international scope. I think the answer was obvious all along that Kevin Warren would be the best choice.
So, Courtney, as you look at where the Bears are now, I said to Jonathan, I've never been this excited as a Bears fan. They've had their pop-up, as Sylvie calls them, surprising seasons. They went to the Super Bowl in 2006 with albeit a very, very good football team. They won it in 85. 2018 was cool until the double doink. This feels different. I'm not as locked in on what's the record in 2023. I'm locked in on what can this whole organization, now that they're shopping at the top shelf, build for me in this new era of Bears football. Do you think the fan base is willing to be a little more patient as this thing gets built, or they want results now?
I think there will be a section of the fan base that is understanding that building things takes time. And, there are the others who are going to want to see them, go to the NFC Championship next year and try to do what the Bengals did from their rebuild season, worst to first. I don't think that's realistic. I think, though, you can see all the pieces that are laid forth for this year. There's a ton of resources for free agency. They've got the number 1 overall draft pick. They have a new team president who's a visionary, not somebody who's just going to reinvent the wheel and kind of force through the same stale thinking that has, honestly been a part of this franchise for a very long time. I don't think that that's a callous thing to say. They needed outside ideas. They literally didn't have any of those for a long time. So all of that said, and the stadium project too, they're building something, and that takes time. I mean, under Kevin Warren, though, Minnesota Vikings got that stadium built in about 3 years. So once they break ground at the Arlington Park property, I think that that's when you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit more, knowing that there will be a new stadium, like a state-of-the-art, best fan experience in game for everyone. I mean, that's something that's a big priority for Kevin Warren, and I think just where this franchise is headed direction-wise, because of all the good things and the resources that they have, you can't expect overnight success with that if you're doing it the right way, and that's what they're trending towards.
Carmen Yurko got a chance to talk to Kevin Warren, the president of the Chicago Bears. You can hear that interview in its entirety on the ESPN Chicago app. Just click Carmen Yurko, you can hear that conversation. One of the questions they asked Courtney is, will your football involvement start with free agency? And Warren said,
Yes, absolutely. As I said, I was with Ryan in the draft room this morning, just talking through just high level, see how he sets up things. And I'm here as a resource. And so I'll be transitioning out of the Big Ten, transitioning here. I'll have, these regular meetings with Ryan and Matt, and the same thing like I'm doing with Ted, from a stadium and finance, accounting, operations, just gathering information. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and we'll all be involved and working together, and then hopefully just add value.
That's a big question of exactly what his role is. We know it's stadium first. We know that. But as far as the draft and free agency, he gave his answer about his involvement. What do you think of that, Courtney? You already have a general manager, but then Kevin Warren wants to be part of the process as well.
Yeah, and that's something he didn't have in Minnesota. I think that's a very big reason why this job was so appealing, because in Minnesota it was a hard and set structure where he ran the business side. Rick Spielman ran the football operations side. The Wilks are absent owners. They're in New Jersey most of the time, so they're not in the building. So I think that's something that, with George being in the building and giving Kevin Warren more credence to be involved in football matters, I think that's really appealing. And it's not like he doesn't have that experience. Like, you've seen this before where there are people who want to meddle in the business, in the football side, who really don't have a clue what they're doing. Kevin Warren has football operations experience, but we're not going to really know what his overall day-to-day dealings are with the roster. Like, is he making roster decisions? Probably not, because what George McCaskey said yesterday is that Ryan has full authority to do whatever he needs to do for the best interest of the Chicago Bears. Like, he's still, at the end of the day, going to be having the final say on football decisions. I just think he's going to have a bigger voice in there than maybe he was used to, even though he did say that in the past, he had collaborated, or at least given, kept George and Ted up to speed on everything, did presentations with them, let them know the direction they were going to go in with certain ideas in free agency and the draft, and then, dealt with any pushback or tried to, kind of explain his thinking. I think he's going to be challenged in a very different way by Kevin Warren, because Kevin Warren's not just your normal football executive who's going to build you a great stadium and worrying about, partnerships and stuff like that. That's obviously a huge part of what he does. But he's got football IQ, and he's got football operations expertise, which I think is intimidating to some. But for Ryan Poles, I think it's a good opportunity for him to have another voice to lean on, somebody from multiple different franchises, and was at the highest level of the Big Ten. That's an invaluable voice that you wouldn't have otherwise.
How active do you think Ryan Poles is already on the phones? Because I went back through and looked at the timetable of recent trades. The Eagles trading up to get Carson Wentz in that draft. The Rams trading up for Jared Goff, man. And to look at these different trades, they don't go down until usually April. So how active do you think he is right now?
I think the holding pattern right now, because we are still in the middle of the beginning of the playoffs. A lot of teams, they're building their draft board, they're building their free agency, their USA list, and that's first and foremost. But to say that conversations aren't happening yet, I think is probably not entirely true. How serious those conversations are typically don't happen until beginning of February, sometime around. It's usually that pocket of time between the Senior Bowl, after the Super Bowl, between then and the Combine, that we see a lot of things happen. I mean, I can think back to, and even I don't remember the picks exactly, but the Blake Bortles trade happened, I think February 24th, something in that window. The Jared Goff trade was early February as well. I don't know if you'll see anything in the immediate term, because you're going to have more teams come into the mix once they're done with the playoffs. I think that's part of it, where everybody's still in this holding pattern really until you get to the Senior Bowl, which is in Mobile, which you find out Luke Getsy's coaching in. That's in a couple of weeks at the end of January. And beyond then, I do think you'll know if they're going to trade this first round pick, if there's going to be anything else, even trades for players. That stuff most times happens before free agency. You don't really see anybody jockeying for positioning with the first round pick the night of the draft. But do remember, I think it was late March when the San Francisco 49ers and their trade, to get Trey Lance, that happened a couple weeks before the draft. So
that happened on March 26th.
Yeah, it was a Friday. And I just remember wow, the draft order changed and we still have a month to go for this thing. So I could see a window like that happening. I know Poles yesterday said that he didn't say holding pattern, but he made it sound like it's quiet right now. It's not going to be quiet for long, though.
Courtney, we got a minute left. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the latest with the Green Bay Packers. We just played just this hour. Thoughts from Aaron Rodgers and the Pat McAfee show, still mulling his future with the Packers. What Kap and I talked about, I told Kap, I said, listen, if I'm Gutekunst, I need to know by April 1st what you want to do. I'm not going to go through this song and dance with you again. Either you are in or you're out. You have to be involved. You want to be part of the process, and you think we need better offensive linemen or receivers or whatever, fine. But you got to be part of the process. I don't have time for this anymore. Either it's you or Jordan Love. But I need to know now, not in July or August.
Well, yeah, he's got 59 million reasons to be back next year. I'll leave it at that. He's going to be a Green Bay Packer.
You think so? Is that
Hoodie? He's got $59 million guaranteed on his contract next year. He's not going anywhere.
How much
No
is that?
way.
How much is he spending that on ayahuasca though? Is that?
I don't know how expensive that stuff is.
That stuff's
Isn't it
not
usually
cheap.
pretty cheap? You can get it in
Peru.
wherever.
Peru.
It's not like a great strain of weed that would cost a lot more than that, I would assume, but I don't know.
But Courtney, I here's where I disagree with Hoodie. He said I got to know by April 1st. I watched every second of what Aaron said yesterday, and I think he has earned the right to say, okay, I got a lot of money coming to me, but I am not going to be part of a rebuild. If you're going to take this thing down and say to David Bakhtiari, hey, we're letting you go. We need to get some cap room. You aren't always healthy. We're going to let you go, and we're not going to bring this guy back, and we're not going to do this. He has every right to say, I want to be traded. If they say, Aaron, we're going to try and win the Super Bowl, we're pushing our chips in the middle, we're going to go get this guy or that guy, then he does owe them by April 1st. I'll be part of the offseason plan. I'll be at OTAs. I'll be at minicamp. Let's get this going.
But Kap, as I said, the Packers have never given me the thought, especially in this iteration of the Packers, to think that they're not trying to be all in. They've not. I haven't seen that in a long time for the Packers. They're saying, "Well, we're going to try to rebuild this thing." They haven't had to because the Bears and the Lions are in the division.
But when you take a quarterback who's going to sit for going on 4 years as your number one pick, that tells me you are not all in.
I mean, the way that they structured Aaron Rodgers' contract to start, I think tells you that they expect him to be back next year. They expected him, to be back when they gave him that deal. Jordan Love is the cog in all of this, because they got to figure out whether they're picking up his fifth-year option, whether they're going to trade him, whether they're going to keep this thing going another year. I honestly think, though, that I don't know if I can foresee such great changes in the way that the Green Bay Packers do their operation. I'm with you, Kap. I don't know how much they're going to change just the direction that they go. I think they're going to try to run it back, though, with this group, and obviously improving at wide receiver, adding certain pieces up front because of all the offensive line injuries that they had. And they're going to say, hey, Aaron, how about one more time? You can be involved in decisions. You can do whatever you want. He has earned time, kind of like Sean McVay, certainly in the situation where he's able to kind of take a step back and think about it. I mean, it's not like he's, following the Cliff Kingsbury route and taking a one-way ticket to Thailand. I mean, I think that this is something that he's going to have to figure out here in the next month or so. But there's no way that he's going to hold them hostage the way that he did all the way up until training camp during the 21 season. That's just not going to happen again.
Courtney, I'll text you later on those strains of weed and the price for sane.
I'm going to go do some research on ayahuasca. I'll let you know how much it is.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.